Commander Zethkai's claws clicked against the metal floor as he walked through the corridors of the mighty warship Devastator. His scarred face bore the marks of countless battles across the galaxy. For 300 years he had served the Vorthok Empire, watching world after world bow before their superior firepower. The briefing chamber doors hissed open, revealing a room filled with his most trusted officers. The air hummed with energy from advanced holographic projectors casting a three-dimensional image of a small blue planet spinning slowly in the center of the room. "Ah, Zethkai," Fleet Admiral Kexvar's deep voice rumbled from the shadows. The massive Vorthok commander stepped forward, his forearms crossed behind his back. "Come, see our next prize." Intelligence Officer Morthok activated additional displays around the room. Target designation: Terra, third planet from a yellow star. Inhabitants call themselves humans. His tentacles danced across the control panel. Bringing up detailed scans of the planet's surface, Zethkai studied the rotating world with professional interest. Blue oceans, green land masses, white clouds swirling in predictable patterns. Looked almost peaceful. Population: approximately 8 billion, Morthok replied, divided into nearly 200 separate nations. They spend considerable resources fighting among themselves. A low chuckle escaped from several officers. Zethkai had seen this pattern before. Divided species were always easier to conquer. While they wasted energy on internal conflicts, the Vorthok could strike with unified force. "Technology assessment?" Zethkai asked, moving closer to examine the tactical displays. "Primitive by our standards," Morthok continued, pulling up images of human spacecraft. Chemical rockets for basic orbital access, nuclear weapons, but crude delivery systems. Their most advanced military aircraft move at barely supersonic speeds. The hologram zoomed in on various human cities. Zethkai observed their building techniques, concrete and steel structures that looked fragile compared to Vorthok biometal constructions. Their defensive installations appeared laughably weak. "Look at this." Weapons specialist Gorthak pointed to surveillance footage of human soldiers. "They require external armor and weapons. No natural defenses, no enhanced strength, no protective shells. They're basically walking meat." The room filled with harsh Vorthok laughter. Zethkai allowed himself a small smile. In his long career, he'd conquered species with natural armor plating. Others with acidic blood, some with telepathic abilities, yet all had fallen before Vorthok military might. "Their communication systems are interesting," Morthok added, displaying complex networks spanning the globe, something they call the Internet. It's very interconnected, but also very vulnerable to disruption. "Excellent," Admiral Kexvar said, his voice carrying the satisfaction of anticipated victory. "Cut their communications, and they'll be blind and confused. Standard procedure." Zethkai examined the data more carefully. The humans seemed to rely heavily on electronic systems. Everything from their power grids to their transportation networks was computerized. One electromagnetic pulse from Vorthok weapons would send them back to the Stone Age. "What about their space presence?" he asked. "Minimal," Morthok replied. "A few small space stations, some exploration probes to nearby planets. Nothing that could threaten our fleet. They haven't even established permanent colonies beyond their own moon." The tactical display shifted to show human military forces. Zethkai observed their formations, their equipment, their training exercises. Everything looked so ... ordinary. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no battle mechs. Just humans in cloth uniforms carrying projectile weapons. Their largest military force numbers barely 3 million active personnel, Gorthak noted with amusement. "Our invasion fleet alone carries 5 million warriors, and their leadership structure." Zethkai inquired, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Chaotic Admiral Kexvar answered, "Multiple competing governments, each with different military doctrines. Some nations are allies, others are enemies. Can't even agree on basic trade policies, let alone coordinate a planetary defense." Zethkai nodded approvingly. Divided command structures had doomed countless species. While enemy leaders argued and competed, Vorthok forces struck with precision and unity. The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from human psychology to their industrial capacity. Every piece of information reinforced the same conclusion: this would be another routine conquest. Timeline? Zethkai asked as the session wound down. 2 solar cycles for complete subjugation, Admiral Kexvar declared confidently. 1 cycle to establish orbital supremacy, another to pacify surface resistance. Their most advanced weapons can't even penetrate our basic armor plating. As the holographic displays flickered off, Zethkai felt the familiar rush of anticipation. Soon, the Vorthok banner would fly over another conquered world. The humans would join the ranks of enslaved species, serving the Empire's expansion across the galaxy. "Prepare the fleet," he commanded his officers. "Full invasion force. We advance at first light." The chamber emptied quickly, each officer eager to prepare for what promised to be a swift and decisive victory. Zethkai remained alone for a moment, studying the now dark displays in 3 centuries of warfare. He had never encountered a species that could match Vorthok's military superiority. These humans, with their primitive technology and divided loyalties, certainly wouldn't be the first. How utterly, completely wrong he was. The first strike went perfectly. Zethkai stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching through the massive viewport as Vorthok dropships descended toward the human mining colony on Kepler 4 for 2b. The settlement was small, 3,000 humans working the asteroid belts for rare metals. Initial resistance? Minimal, reported Captain Vextel from the surface. Standard projectile weapons? No energy shields. Colony surrendering after 47 minutes of engagement. Zethkai allowed himself a satisfied grunt. Right on schedule. The humans had fought with typical courage, he'd give them that much. But courage meant nothing against superior firepower and technology. Within an hour, the colony's leaders were signing surrender documents in broken Vorthok script. "Is one complete?" he announced to his fleet. "Proceed to target 2. The second colony sat on a barren world rich in titanium deposits. Intelligence reports showed a larger population, nearly 10,000 humans, but the same primitive defenses. Zethkai expected another quick victory. He was wrong. "Sir, something's different here," Tactical Officer Morvex reported as their ships entered orbit. "The humans aren't running to shelters. They're moving equipment." Through his enhanced vision scopes, Zethkai observed the colony's industrial district. Massive mining machines were being repositioned, their operators working with unusual urgency. What are they doing with those excavators? The answer came 30 minutes later, when Vorthok assault troops landed. The first wave of soldiers advanced confidently toward the colony's main compound, expecting token resistance before inevitable surrender. Instead, they walked into hell. A mining laser designed to cut through solid rock sliced through the air, its concentrated beam punching straight through advanced Vorthok armor plating. The soldier wearing that armor simply vanished in a flash of superheated metal and flesh. "What was that?" Zethkai demanded, watching his tactical displays show casualties. Mounting rapidly. "Sir, the humans are using industrial equipment as weapons," his surface commander reported, his voice strained. "Mining lasers, plasma cutters, even their cargo haulers are being weaponized." On the main screen, Zethkai watched in growing amazement. As human miners operated massive excavation machines like battle mechs, one particularly bold human drove a tunneling bore straight into a Vorthok armored vehicle, the industrial drill tearing through alien metal like paper. "Impossible," he muttered. "No species learns to adapt their technology this quickly." But the evidence was right there on his screens. Humans who had been mining, or just hours earlier, were now using demolition charges as grenades, turning maintenance welders into close combat weapons, and somehow coordinating these improvised tactics across the entire colony. Then the communications came through. A human face appeared on Zethkai's main display, young male, with short black hair and dirt-stained coveralls. Despite a bleeding cut across his forehead, his dark eyes burned with fierce determination. "I'm Hyan Wu, Colony Defense Coordinator," the human said in surprisingly clear Vorthok. "Want our world? Come and take it." The transmission cut abruptly. Within minutes, similar messages were broadcasting from every human settlement across the planet. Somehow, using their primitive internet networks, they had coordinated a planet-wide resistance in real time. How did they learn our language so quickly? Zethkai asked his intelligence officer. Unknown, sir. Our previous encounters suggest most species require months to achieve basic communication. The situation deteriorated rapidly. What should have been a simple 3-day pacification operation stretched into its second week. The humans had adapted. Tactics that Zethkai had never encountered in 3 centuries of warfare. They fought from underground tunnels, emerging to strike supply convoys before disappearing back into their mining shafts. They used their knowledge of the planet's geology to collapse sections of terrain, trapping Vorthok vehicles in carefully planned ambushes. Sir, we're losing more equipment than we're capturing, reported Supply Commander Thekvar. The humans are somehow disabling our vehicles and weapons without destroying them completely. The truth became clear when reinforcements arrived from the main fleet. Zethkai watched in horror as human fighters emerged from concealed positions wielding modified Vorthok energy weapons. They had not only captured alien technology, but somehow reverse-engineered it to work with human physiology. A female human engineer named Daeyun led one particularly devastating raid against a Vorthok supply depot. Security footage showed her team moving with military precision, using captured Vorthok plasma rifles to devastating effect against their original creators. How is this possible? Zethkai demanded. Their technology is centuries behind ours?
Our analysis suggests that
humans have an unusual capacity for rapid learning and adaptation, his science officer reported nervously. They appear to treat each engagement as a learning experience, immediately applying new knowledge to subsequent encounters. The final humiliation came 3 weeks into what should have been a brief operation. Zethkai's communication officer looked up from his station with an expression of complete bewilderment. Sir, we're receiving surrender terms from the human colony. Finally, Zethkai breathed, expecting to see white flags and defeated faces on his screen. Instead, Haiyan Wu appeared again. But now the young human was wearing a complete set of Vorthok battle armor, obviously taken from fallen soldiers and somehow modified to fit his smaller frame. Behind him stood dozens of other humans, all similarly equipped with captured alien technology. Commander Zethkai, Haiyan Wu said with calm confidence that sent chills down the alien's spine. I'm transmitting our terms. Leave our system within 24 hours, and we'll let you keep your remaining ships. The transmission ended, the silence that followed. Zethkai stared at his tactical displays showing massive Vorthok casualties and equipment losses. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, he felt something completely foreign doubt. His confidence wasn't just cracking, it was shattering completely. The Third World was supposed to restore Vorthok pride. New Geneva Prime was a massive industrial planet with 12 billion humans spread across 5 continents. Intelligence reports showed standard defensive installations, orbital platforms with basic missiles, small patrol fleet of primitive vessels, and ground-based anti-aircraft. Systems that looked decades behind Vorthok technology. Zethkai assembled his most powerful battle group for this assault. 15 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and over 200 support vessels. The largest Vorthok fleet deployed in 50 years, all to crush human resistance and send a message across the galaxy. This ends today, he declared to his fleet commanders. No more surprises, no more delays. We demonstrate the true power of the Vorthok Empire. The human response was immediate and completely unexpected, as Zethkai's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. Proximity alarms screamed across every bridge. Hundreds of small human spacecraft were accelerating directly toward the Vorthok formation at maximum velocity. Sir, human fighters approaching, Sensor Operator Klexver reported, his voice rising with confusion. They're not firing weapons. They're aiming directly at our ships. Through the main viewport, Zethkai watched tiny human fighters streak toward his massive dreadnoughts like metallic meteors. This had to be some kind of suicide attack, a desperate final gesture from a defeated species. But as the first impacts occurred, Zethkai realized these weren't random suicide runs. Each human pilot was targeting specific sections of Vorthok vessels with surgical precision. The small fighters punched through armor plating and exploded inside critical systems. Reactor coupling damaged on the decimator, came the first report. Navigation systems offline on the destroyer. Engine core compromised on the Annihilator. One human pilot caught Zethkai's attention. The fighter's call sign read Taman on the tactical display. This pilot executed a perfect approach vector, threading between defensive fire from 3 separate Vorthok ships to strike the reactor coupling of the heavy cruiser Dominator as Taman's fighter exploded against the cruiser's hull. The pilot ejected at the last possible second. His small figure tumbled through space in a standard human EVA suit, apparently laughing as his ship's destruction triggered a massive secondary explosion that crippled the entire vessel. Target their reactor coupling, Taman's voice crackled. Across open communication frequencies, that's their weak point. Hit them there, and the whole power grid goes down. Zethkai felt his blood freeze. How did this human know about Vorthok reactor coupling vulnerabilities? That information was classified. At the highest levels of Imperial engineering, the answer came in the most terrifying way possible. Sir, hull breach on Deck 7, his security chief reported urgently. Human boarding party has penetrated the subjugator. On the tactical display, Zethkai watched as a captured Vorthok transport ship docked with one of his destroyers. Vessel had obviously been taken during earlier battles and somehow made space-worthy by human engineers. Leading the boarding party was a human warrior, identified as Jinho. Security cameras showed him moving through Vorthok corridors with deadly efficiency, wielding captured plasma weapons and wearing modified alien armor. Behind him came dozens of human soldiers, all similarly equipped. How are they operating our technology? Chief Engineer Morthax demanded, watching the security feeds. Our weapons have biological locks, DNA scanners, neural interfaces. Humans shouldn't be able to use them at all. But they were using them. Jinho's team systematically disabled the destroyer's defenses, captured the bridge, and within 12 minutes had turned the ship's own weapons against the Vorthok fleet. They're learning our technology in real time, Morthax reported, his voice shaking with disbelief. It's impossible, but they're doing it. They're adapting our biolocks, overriding our security systems, even improving our weapon efficiency. The space battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, Zethkai had lost 8 major vessels and been forced to withdraw to long-range bombardment positions. But the humans had another surprise waiting. On New Geneva's surface, a human commander named Sujin was orchestrating something Zethkai had never witnessed in 3 centuries of conquest. She was simultaneously coordinating the evacuation of 12 billion civilians while directing orbital defense systems with impossible precision. Transport Fleet 7, you're clear for departure. Sujin's voice came through intercepted communications. Orbital Platform 9, target the lead dreadnoughts. Port side, they've got hull damage there. Zethkai watched in amazement as massive civilian transport ships lifted off from every major city, carrying millions of humans to safety. At the same time, ground-based defense systems struck his fleet with coordinated precision that suggested military genius. All civilians clear from Sector 7, Sujin reported to her forces. Taehyun begins Scorched Earth Protocol. What happened next broke every rule of warfare, Zethkai understood. Instead of defending their infrastructure, the humans began systematically destroying it. Every factory, every power plant, every resource extraction facility was demolished by the retreating human forces. They're destroying their own cities, his tactical officer reported in disbelief. Industrial centers, manufacturing plants, even their space elevators. Everything of value is being eliminated. Explosions blossomed across New Geneva's surface as human demolition teams executed the most thorough scorched earth campaign in galactic history. They weren't just denying resources to the Vorthok. They were ensuring that conquest would gain the Empire absolutely nothing. When Zethkai's forces finally established control over the planet's major population centers, they found empty buildings, disabled infrastructure, and an elaborate network of booby traps that continued claiming Vorthok lives for weeks afterward. "Sir," his aide whispered during a private briefing session, "perhaps we underestimated them." Zethkai stared at the tactical reports spread across his command table. Casualty lists, equipment losses, resource expenditures, everything pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The humans were not just resisting Vorthok conquest, they were winning. His hands trembled as he reached for another report. For the first time in 300 years of military service, Commander Zethkai of the mighty Vorthok Empire was beginning to understand what fear felt like. The emergency klaxon wailed through Zethkai's flagship as he rushed to the war room. 3 simultaneous attacks on major Vorthok supply stations, something that should have been impossible given human limitations. Yet the tactical displays showed undeniable proof. "Report," Zethkai demanded, studying the holographic battle maps.
Alert.
"Supply Base 7 was hit first," Intelligence Officer Morthic explained, his voice tight with concern. 17 human ships appeared from hyperspace, struck the fuel depot, and vanished before our patrol fleet could respond. Base 14 and Base 21 suffered similar attacks within the same hour. The precision was terrifying. Each strike had targeted the most critical infrastructure while avoiding heavy casualties. The humans weren't just randomly attacking, they were systematically crippling Vorthok supply lines across 3 separate star systems. "Who's commanding these operations?" Zethkai asked. "Admiral Jehoon," came the reply. "Human military records show he was a cargo ship captain before the war started. Now he's coordinating fleet movements across multiple sectors with tactical brilliance that matches our best strategists." Zethkai studied the attack patterns on his displays. The timing, the target selection, the escape routes, everything demonstrated military genius. How had a species with no unified command structure produced such capable leaders so quickly? "They're not just defending anymore," Zethkai told Fleet Admiral Kexvar during their private briefing. "They're hunting us, actively seeking out our installations and striking with surgical precision." The situation became even more alarming when surveillance reports arrived from the outer colonies. Humans weren't fighting alone anymore. "Sir, you need to see this," his communications officer announced, activating a captured transmission from the Zephyrian sector. The hologram showed something that should have been possible. Zephyrian warriors fighting alongside human soldiers in coordinated attacks against Vorthok outposts. The Zephyrians had been enslaved for over 2 centuries, their rebellion crushed decades ago. "Impossible," Fleet Admiral Kexvar snarled when he saw the footage. "The Zephyrians have been broken for generations. They barely have functional governments, let alone military capabilities. But the evidence was undeniable. Human diplomat named Yunyung appeared in intercepted communications, speaking fluent Zephyrian while coordinating joint military operations. Somehow, she had convinced a species that had given up hope to take up arms again. How did they do it? Zethkai wondered aloud. The Zephyrians wouldn't even look at their own liberation movements. What did the humans offer them? The answer came from captured Zephyrian prisoners. Hope. The humans had offered them something that Vorthok had never encountered, the genuine belief that the Empire could be defeated. More species began joining the human cause. The aquatic Nereidans, the crystalline quartzites, even some of the insectoid hive minds that had served the Vorthok for centuries, all united under human leadership against their former masters. Captain Dong Hyan led the most successful mixed species strike teams. Security footage showed him commanding Zephyrian shock troops, Nereidan submarine units, and human marines in perfectly coordinated assaults that devastated Vorthok strongholds across 6 different worlds. The turning point came at Kepler Station, the Empire's most heavily fortified outpost in the sector. Zethkai had positioned himself there personally, commanding a battle group of 47 ships, the largest single fleet the Empire had assembled in decades, when the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Zethkai counted only 23 vessels, less than half his strength. Victory seemed certain. Fleet Commander Minho opened communications before the battle began. The human appeared calm, almost relaxed, as he looked directly at Zethkai through the transmission. "Surrender," Minho said simply. "You're outmatched." Zethkai couldn't help but laugh. He gestured toward his tactical displays, showing the overwhelming Vorthok numbers. You face the might of the Vorthok Empire, human. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your tiny fleet is outnumbered 2-1. Minho's expression never changed. His dark eyes remained steady, confident. You conquered prey. We're predators. The transmission ended. What followed was the most devastating military defeat in Vorthok history. The humans didn't fight like any species Zethkai had encountered, used the battlefield itself as a weapon. Asteroid fields became missile swarms. Under human control, gravity wells from nearby planets pulled Vorthok ships into crushing tidal forces. Even the radiation from Kepler Station's star became a tactical advantage. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, Zethkai's mighty fleet was scattered across the system, half his ships captured or destroyed. The humans had somehow turned superior, Vorthok numbers into a disadvantage, using the enemy's own formations against them. The final humiliation came from a single human pilot named Wu Jin. Security recordings showed his small fighter deliberately flying into a massive solar flare, erupting from Kepler's star. The radiation should have killed any living being instantly instead. Wu Jin emerged from the plasma storm with his ship's hull glowing white-hot, using the solar radiation to overload and disable Zethkai's flagship. The impossible maneuver left the mighty Vorthok dreadnought drifting helplessly in space, as Zethkai prepared to evacuate his burning command ship. One final message came through the communications array. The face that appeared on his screen was familiar, Hyenwu, the young human from the very first colony. But now Hyenwu wore the uniform of a human fleet commander, with battle ribbons and rank insignia that marked him as a veteran warrior. Behind him stood the bridge of what was obviously a captured and modified Vorthok warship. "We offered you terms," Hyenwu said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned his position through countless battles. "You chose war. Now face the consequences." The transmission ended as Zethkai's escape pod launched from his dying flagship. Round him, the remains of the once mighty Vorthok fleet drifted in defeat, while human vessels moved with the confidence of apex predators who had found their prey. The war room fell silent as Zethkai finished his testimony. Around the curved table sat 37 Vorthok officers, all that remained of the once mighty Imperial fleet. Their battle armor was scratched and dented, their proud insignia now meaningless symbols of a fallen empire. This account serves as warning, Zethkai said solemnly, his voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of military service. The humans are not like any species we've encountered. They don't simply fight, they evolve. Every battle teaches them. Every defeat makes them stronger. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered to life, showing the current galactic map. What had once been a vast expanse of blue Vorthok territory was now painted in red zones. Former Imperial worlds, now under human protection. The transformation was complete and devastating. "Look at this," Zethkai continued, manipulating the display to show fleet movements. "Admiral Jihoon's forces patrol our former slave worlds, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The Zephyrians now have their own government. The Nereidans are rebuilding their ocean cities. The Quartzites are mining their crystal worlds for their own benefit." Captain Morvex, one of the youngest surviving officers, leaned forward. "How did they do it, Commander? How did they turn our empire against us so completely?" Zethkai studied the faces around the table. Warriors who had once believed themselves invincible, now struggling to understand their total defeat. "They did something we never learned how to do. They made friends instead of slaves." The display shifted to show human diplomatic missions across the galaxy. Ambassador Yunyung was negotiating trade agreements with the Crystalline Collective. Captain Dong Hyan was training former slave species in defensive military tactics. Commander Sujin was overseeing the reconstruction of worlds damaged during the war. "They could have exterminated us," Zethkai continued, his voice growing quieter. "When we offered our final surrender, they had the firepower to wipe out every Vorthok world. Instead, they offered terms. Surrender our weapons, release all enslaved species, and face war crimes tribunals. Those who accepted live in exile, but live nonetheless." The memory of that final surrender still haunted him. The massive human fleet had surrounded the last Vorthok stronghold, but instead of orbital bombardment, they had sent negotiators. Commander Sujin herself had boarded his ship to accept the surrender documents. I remember standing on the bridge of my flagship, Zethkai said, looking out at the stars through the war room's viewport. Commander Sujin walked through corridors. We had used to plan the conquest of her species. She could have executed me on the spot. I had ordered the deaths of millions of humans. The room remained silent as Zethkai recalled that moment. Sujin had been wearing simple human military fatigues. No fancy armor or ceremonial weapons. Just a soldier doing her duty with quiet professionalism. I asked her why they spared us, Zethkai said. She looked at me with those strange human eyes and replied, because mercy is what separates civilization from barbarism. Several officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The concept of mercy toward defeated enemies was foreign to Vorthok military doctrine. In their empire, conquest meant subjugation or extinction. They rebuilt the worlds we destroyed, Zethkai continued, activating new sections of the holographic display. Former slave species now have their own governments, their own military forces, their own trade networks, and they're all allied with humanity. The tactical implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just defeated the Vorthok Empire, they had created something stronger in its place. A galactic alliance based on mutual cooperation rather than forced submission. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Dekvar. We've received another message from the Human Galactic Council. They're offering technical assistance for our refugee colonies.
Oh.
Zethkai nodded slowly. Even in defeat, the humans continued to demonstrate their fundamental difference from the Vorthok. Where his species had ruled through fear and oppression, the humans governed through inspiration and cooperation. The Empire is finished, Zethkai concluded, standing to address his officers one final time. We thought we were apex predators, but we were just bullies. The humans showed us what real strength looks like. The power to build instead of destroy, to unite instead of divide. The holographic display now showed human patrol ships maintaining order in what was once Vorthok space. Not as occupying forces, but as peacekeepers, ensuring the transition to freedom proceeded smoothly. Admiral Minho had kept his word. Surrender meant safety, not slavery. They've given us a chance to rebuild as something better, Zethkai said, his voice carrying a note of hope that surprised even himself. Our children won't grow up believing that might makes right. They'll learn what we never understood, that true power comes from lifting others up, not crushing them down. As the meeting dispersed, officers filed out to begin their new lives in exile. Some would face human tribunals for war crimes. Others would work in refugee camps, helping displaced Vorthok civilians. All would live under the protection of the species they had once tried to enslave. Zethkai remained alone in the war room, staring out at the stars. Through the viewport, he could see human patrol ships maintaining their eternal vigil. Their sleek vessels moved with the confidence of guardians rather than conquerors. The humans had won not just through superior tactics, but through something. The Vorthok had never possessed the ability to turn enemies into allies, to inspire rather than intimidate, to build bridges instead of walls. For the first time in 3 centuries of military service, Commander Zethkai, of the former Vorthok Empire, felt something other than the desire for conquest. He felt hope for a future where strength meant protection, where power meant responsibility, and where victory meant everyone could win. The age of the Vorthok Empire was over. The age of human leadership had begun. The end.